Hello to our listeners and viewers. This is Big J. During this time, there have been protests worldwide over the murder of George Floyd by Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin in broad daylight and on camera. The protest for justice and against police brutality has been met with more police brutality. This has happened against citizens, journalists, and state and local politicians. Many people are peacefully protesting, but doing so in harm's way due to police officer attacks and escalations. This is also being done under the encouragement of the current administration, where there is no leadership or protections for the citizens to exercise their rights under the Constitution. That's why myself and co-host Dag and Watney want to make you aware of two organizations that are trying to help the people combat the systemic brutality that we face in the U.S. with our militarized police force. Act Blue and the National Bail Fund Network. They're raising bail funds and legal aid along with other organizations to help activists seeking justice for George Floyd and other victims of police brutality. Please consider donating to these causes. Beyond Trek Podcast thanks you for your support.
Hi, I'm Marina Sirtis, and you're going boldly with Beyond Trek Podcast.
This is Beyond Trek Podcast, your source for Star Trek on social media and around the web. I'm Big J.
I'm Watney.
And I'm Dag, the Trivia Master. You can find us on Facebook at Beyond Trek Podcast and on Twitter at Beyond Trek Pod.
Red alert.
Isn't it kind of ironic that we are recording tonight and it's, what's the date? June 18th, 2020. And that's a special day, isn't it, Dag?
It is. It is. It's the Pluto's in retrograde.
Well, Pluto's not a planet.
But it's also the day that we're recording our retrospective on Picard.
Yes. Well, and I'm Big J here with Dag and Watney. So we're going to talk about Picard in Star Trek Picard. And oh, I love these graphics you do. This is nice. And look at that uniform. Look at this uniform Dag is wearing. Where did you get that? That is nice.
This Starfleet Academy, of course.
Yeah. What Watney said. Yeah, these are now available on eBay. They've got the Admiral's uniform as well as the regular non-Admiral's varieties. And they're really nice. And there's a lot of people on Twitter who also have the Fleet Admiral uniform, and I love them.
Well, it's very sharp. It's very nice. I like it. And I like the eyepiece that you've got there.
Yes, that was Etsy.
Oh.
I love this to death. And
it's got kind of a synth look to you. Or, well, maybe not that, but
well, it's an XB
Borg.
thing.
Yeah, you're an XB.
Since Picard is my favorite XB Admiral, I thought I would give a shout out.
You want to start us off?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and do this.
All right.
Wait a second. Jay, there's some kind of weird interference coming on. What's going on? Uh-oh.
Jay. Oh, what is this?
The Borg.
Oh, no.
It's Locutus.
It's Locutus. Why is it Locutus?
It's the 30th anniversary of Best of Both Worlds.
Today is the 30th anniversary.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Big J, do you feel old?
Oh, my God.
Because I do.
Thanks. No, I didn't until you said that. So, thank you very much.
Viewers, I just turned 30
Wait a minute.
April of this year, 2020 of our Lord. And so to hear that Best of Both Worlds came out after I was born makes me think I was born on the right side of history.
What, like a month and a half after you were born?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Wah, wah, wah.
Yes, I feel old. Oh, Jesus.
Time
that is just
marches on.
You suck. No, you.
I know.
Why'd you have to do that to me? Why?
Because it's fun, Jay.
Friends.
I can't believe 30 years ago. That is very hard because sometimes I forget that, yeah, I'm that old. But 30 years ago today was when we were introduced to Locutus of Borg. And I remember every moment of that day, that episode, and watching it. That was a huge cliffhanger then. And I've got to tell you, watching that, and this was back when you had to wait a whole summer before you would see what would happen next. And that was the longest summer I had ever been through, because it ended with the Mr. Worf fire from Riker and goes to be continued. And, you know, I was in so much shock that I did something that now seems very irrational, very silly. I was recording it on VHS. And so I stopped recording and I rewound it and played it again, thinking somehow it would continue on. Like I couldn't grasp that this was a cliffhanger,
that they had done this to me.
Yes. And I'm sitting there watching the end credits, just with my mouth hanging open. Like, no, I can't believe they did this. Well, and you know, they didn't know if Patrick Stewart was going to return for the fourth season. That was kind of up in the air. And that was one of the motivations behind this, because there was that possibility that that Patrick Stewart was not going to continue.
So that's the first I've ever heard of that. What's the tea there? What was his, like, I might leave? Was it because, like, you wanted more money or what?
You know, I would have to, I'm a little foggy on the details, but I do recall, I want to say there was a TV Guide magazine that I read at the time, and there was, it was just the way it was worded was that was a little bit up in the air. Like it wasn't a solid thing that he would be returning, and it probably was over money. So
are you looking it up, Dag?
Of course I am.
So for our Star Trek Picard retrospective, of course, we're going to talk about Picard. Yes. It's been a long line.
It's been a long road.
It's been a long road
from there to here.
Done a lot of retrospectives. I don't think anyone can tell us that we didn't thoroughly dissect the entire season of Picard.
Yeah.
So
in fact, I've talked in circles at some points just about the show and season 1 of Picard. Captain Jean-Luc Picard.
We saved the best for last.
It really is difficult too, because in this retrospective series, we have talked about relationships between characters and then gone on to talk about another character in another episode with a relationship to a character that we've already discussed in the previous episode. And looking at it from the perspective of that character can sort of help us shed light on that character's motivations and how they approached those relationships. And here we are in our final episode of this Picard season 1 retrospective, and we're looking at Jean-Luc Picard, with whom we all have 30 plus years of history. And we're seeing where he is 20 years after the death of Data, and he is, you know, tremendously racked with guilt over Data's sacrifice. But he is still on his winery, just chilling, sort of retired, a lot of angst. He's very frustrated. Starfleet sort of betrayed its ideals, kicked him to the curb, and he's been living as a retired Federation citizen ever since.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say there's kind of a lot of things that he's dealing with. One is still grieving over the loss of Data, and to add on top of that, he's more than a decade into the time where he gave Starfleet a choice, and we didn't have the full details right in that first episode, but he had given Starfleet a choice to accept his backup plan for saving the Romulans or accept his resignation, and they went with the resignation. So here he is on his vineyard. He's got not so much alone. I mean, he does have his dog, number one, which is nice. So he has a companion and his 2 Romulan friends, but he's doing what he likes, though. He's always had a passion for the family, which he kind of picked up more as a result of after the events of Best of Both Worlds. So, I was glad that he found something and was on the vineyard, but when he meets Daj, that it seemed like that spark in Picard came back. He got that purpose. He had a mission. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he was really like still kind of dreaming about Data. I mean, playing games with him in his old favorite starship and probably his favorite seat in the bar, and not wanting the game to end. So we enter the next act of Picard's life as viewers, watching him kind of, like he says later on in like a couple episodes in, he says he was waiting to die.
Right.
And so that's a hard thing to swallow, like thinking about one of the most beloved characters in all of media, much less sci-fi, much less Star Trek itself. So, yeah, it's very hard to watch, and your favorite character, like I said, go through those kind of emotions. But yeah, once he meets Daj, he's like, and then Daj like dies in front of him. Which, do you remember when I said like early on that Daj was going to come back?
I do remember you saying that, yes. And I tried to convince you that she thoroughly and completely blew up. I did not see where you were going.
They made a point to say like one single atom. So I thought that maybe like they didn't leave a trace of her left. Like nothing was left of her.
Well, but she had a twin that we found out. So
technically she did come back.
Yeah.
Period.
So, and that's what set him off on his mission.
Yeah.
He had a second calling, or maybe a 12th calling by this point in his career. Things had winded down. He's the old, what is the trope in the Western? The retired sheriff coming back for one more ride off into the sunset?
Yes. One more ride in the sunset.
Wilier.
Very like Clint Eastwood from Unforgiven. It's kind of the feeling, the vibe that I was getting from it.
I wanted to take a moment to remind us of Laris and Jabin, who served on his estate. Tal Shiar officers who gave us the exposition about the Zhat Vash. I really appreciated Laris's character, and I felt the way that they played these 3 together. Patrick Stewart really sold me on these are old friends.
Mm-hmm.
I liked her acting and characterization, but she's a Romulan, right?
Well, this is the first time that we had really seen Romulans played this way.
Right.
I mean,
not in like I'm going to betray you. I'm the USSR. Rah, rah, rah.
Yeah.
Like,
Standard issue haircut with the pillow shoulder pad.
Yep. Pillow shoulder pads.
Yeah. Although they did the more like the mean Romulans in Picard definitely got the shoulder pad treatment in a great way. Mm-hmm. They modernized the Romulan 90s look.
Yeah.
For sure. But it's like weird to me because this Romulan woman is supposed to be like, she explains that Romulans don't use anything more complicated than a calculator.
Right.
Like, and then she can somehow hack in, and they have this device that can literally molecularly reassemble a crime scene as the crime is happening.
Yep.
Make it make sense.
Yep.
That's all I'm going to say.
Well, it was what was needed to drive the plot and get Picard started in his action.
Plot.
It's plot.
I know why they did it. That's the only reason they did it. Those things are banned. They're not only are they banned, but they're inaccurate. She's like, ha, that's what we wanted you to think. We're super fucking smart. Except for I here I have a calculator in my back pocket. It's the most advanced thing I own.
The calculator just happens to, reconstruct the material residuum as well.
But wasn't that photonic residuum or something? Something like that. Yeah, it was.
Residuum is a word I definitely remember because I'm like, that's not a word.
Yeah. It's like, I can't remember how they figured out this is where Dodge lived. I can't remember how they figured out. Oh my god, it was a while ago that we watched the first episode, but I clearly just remember being really confused about it. Like,
yeah, there was definitely some strange elements to how they got to Dodge's place, and so we reconstructed the material continuum, but then we just realized that whoever killed Dodge put a blocker there, so that couldn't be done. So we invented this really cool contraption that couldn't do anything anyway. So we had to hack into Dodge's computer and find out that she had a twin sister somewhere. So, knowing she was a synth, we went and talked to the Daystrom Institute to see, hey, synths, and Girardi was like, oh, Maddox built these things, and they're usually done in clones. And that's when Picard was like, oh, there's two. Okay, where's the second one? We have to go find Maddox, and so on and so forth. So
okay, yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
But yeah, Picard really started this beginning. I felt the tired old man. And then as soon as Dodge comes into his life, he's reinvigorated, and it is that trope again. He is ready to roll. It's a call to action. I think there's, is it Joseph Campbell's The Hero Cycle? And, this was yet another call to which Picard responds.
The quest of the hero.
We also find out that he is suffering from some strange illness that is going to kill him. And so while we're watching this, critically aware that whatever is happening over the course of these episodes is dangerous. Ultimately, he's going to die anyway. I don't think a lot of us were super ready for how that was portrayed, and we'll talk about that. But I definitely wasn't expecting it, and you all know my opinion on that if you've listened to the other episodes.
You mean with his impending possible demise?
Well, just the way that they handled his conclusion in the overall story. And we have a short discussion on that towards the end of this presentation, where we talk about life and death and his ultimate resolution with himself and Data. But yeah, no, he's like hell-bent on figuring out where Soji is. And so he calls up an old friend and he's like, hey, I need a pilot. And Raffi sends him up to Rios. And, we realize that these are people who are sort of living on the dregs of Federation society. Picard's desire to get off world is the excuse the narrative needs to show us that everything isn't all pretty in this world. But Picard gets pretty pissed at that admiral for basically saying, no, you can't have another Starfleet ship. Are you insane? With much more colorful metaphors.
Oh, yeah. They were pretty colorful. Oh, there's Watney's kitty. We missed the kitty.
Evie making an appearance.
And my comm badge was all jacked up. Why didn't you guys tell me it was crooked? I just fixed it.
It's been a day.
Oh, come on. You never pay attention to how I look.
You look fantastic.
Whatever.
Jay, if we did have a problem with how you look, we'd tell you. I'm super jealous. Jay's got the First Contact uniform. I don't have the First Contact uniform, and Jay's is custom tailored, and I can't do that. That's amazing.
I think yours looks better. So sorry to sidetrack you on that. So
no, and honestly, it's a great time to mention that if you're listening to this on Anchor.fm or any of our audio syndications on like Spotify, for example, we have a YouTube channel. That's what we keep referencing. We have these discussions live, and we record them and post them, so you can watch us talk. We're also playing alongside us screenshots and GIFs and clips from the series. So come check us out on YouTube.
Thank you, Wani.
Of course. My pleasure. Now, where were we? Talking about sheer fucking hubris.
Well,
Yeah,
we just went past that, and Picard's now trying to wine and dine Raffi to help him out with his mission.
Yeah, he knows definitely how to manipulate her with the wine, which I can't say I'd say no either.
I could be completely pissed at you, and if you came to me with like a pizza asking for a favor, that might soften me up. Yeah, that or
give me a pizza with that crispy
chocolate chip cookies or a steak,
macaroni and cheese.
Yeah, I mean food,
mac and cheese.
Food's my weakness.
For those of you listening, please don't be hungry right now. There is this weaving element through Picard that he has strained a lot of his relationships with these people. The Admiral just wasn't having any of his crowd. Raffi was ticked off at him for what happened in their mutual past. Rios had been kicked out of Starfleet and basically was like, I'm done with Starfleet. Don't talk to me.
Yeah.
Girardi was sort of like naively going along with it. Elnor was pissed because he had abandonment issues. Seven didn't care about him because she saw him as a cowboy when she was just trying to take care of people who were struggling to live. That's just an element that constantly recurs through Picard as he is having to battle this opposition.
Honestly, I think it's a lot to do with his pride. I think Picard is a prideful person.
He is.
And when we see, so let's go back to the examples. We see him with the Admiral. She's pissed because of the interview he did. We go to Raffi. She's pissed because she felt abandoned by him after she basically got fired because for guilty by association, basically. And Picard's living in the big old mansion, and she's in a modular home.
Why is she upset about that? This is a post-scarcity society. She can.
So why doesn't she have a vineyard?
Why doesn't she just go live where the hell? Yeah. Well, but okay, that's a whole other discussion.
We talked about that in the Raffi episode.
We did. Yeah.
I think she does kind of self-punish herself a little for her own failed relationships, like with her family. But we talked about that. What was the other example?
Specifically towards Picard, Elnor.
Yeah.
Right.
Elnor, he's abandoned to Picard, comes to basically be like the white savior in the Romulan culture, and doesn't pan out well for him.
It doesn't. It's like he burned a lot of bridges.
He did. But by way of neglect.
Right.
And that's kind of what we see we see him kind of come full circle towards the end of TNG, where he's like, I should have done this a long time ago.
Yeah.
And you would think that he kind of like he would have carried that forward. But we learn he didn't do that. He did with the TNG group. Maybe not like Geordi, who we never saw, or, any of the other main casts. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of backtracking he kind of did in Picard. And I think a lot of it was because of the synth attack and the Romulan sun.
It really demoralized him.
It did.
It really did. And he was an idealist for so long. And I said this before elsewhere, but being an idealist in space gives me very vivid imagery of someone trying to boil a bathtub with their eyeballs.
Ooh. Ow.
It's impossible.
Right.
Because space is cruel.
Well,
and idealism doesn't accept the flawed nature of organic beings. And
I think you're right.
And it finally caught up. He couldn't talk his way out of something. And so here we see him dejected for years and years. I'm curious why he didn't just go to Nepenthe and live with Troy and Riker. Yeah. I feel like that would have been way more fun.
I feel like that would have been maybe a little awkward. Just a little
Why?
bit. I don't know. It'd be like, I don't know.
It's healing Earth.
Well, yeah, that's true. But so here's how what I think of where he's at. It's that Picard was not used to losing. He was not used to not being able to solve something, talk his way through something, to diplomacy his way into any situation he needed. And I got the impression that besides failing the first time to enter the academy and losing Jack Crusher on the Stargazer, and losing the Stargazer, that he hadn't really had any. Well, then yes, he was assimilated by the Borg, but it was like he didn't have any losses on his record, and he was probably maybe got overconfident of himself in that I'm Jean-Luc Picard and things are just supposed to go a certain way because I will them to. And then you start stacking these losses. First, he loses Data. Then at some point he takes his promotion to Admiral that Kirk told him not to do. And so then he loses, has to ends up resigning from Starfleet. So it just went on a downward spiral for him. And that's where we get to where, like what Dag said, or I think Lonnie said, he's waiting to die. You know, he was used to winning and then started suffering some losses, and it was a bit too much. Especially when he went to talk to the CNC about getting a ship and got turned down there. The feeling that I got from him after that was that even at that moment, he still felt as if with who I am and my name, that I should be able to talk my way into making this happen. And then it gets shut down again. So, and now he gets to dress up as a smuggler on Free Cloud.
Space pirate. Yeah. That's got me in a pensive state of mind thinking about the way you said that. I'm thinking, like, Starfleet was a part of his life for over 50 years. And he probably got really used to that regimented command structure.
Yes.
And now he's working outside of that. And we, the audience, get to be the witnesses to how life works outside of that command structure when you have been entrenched in it for more than half your life.
Some things just don't go away. You know, it's when it's a part of your life for so long, it just, especially after that long, it doesn't just go away.
Yeah. He's, reminds me of this Tool lyrics about a warrior struggling to remain consequential as he ages. And kind of like the best days are behind him kind of thing, which is a very scary thought. And I think Picard was kind of feeling that after that, like, serious loss. He just spent a lot of time time thinking.
Right.
It's good words.
And the other thing that shocked me a little bit, and I may be the only one who thought this, but I was looking forward, of course, to his reunion with Hugh, in which we have some video clips of that playing. But the trauma and PTSD that he showed in regards to seeing the Borg cube, which they're calling the artifact, and then the thought of going onto a Borg cube and just being there. It was great that we saw that. Well, I don't mean great as in, yeah, that's awesome that he's having PTSD. And the portrayal of how he felt with it, I thought was good. It felt a little bit out of nowhere. And here's why I say that, because in First Contact, and I know it was different. First Contact was First Contact, but it didn't seem like he seemed to be more affected about the thought of being on a Borg cube around the Borg more here and during the show than he did the last time he dealt with them in First Contact. Now, granted, he was not on a Borg cube. It could be a different trigger, because in First Contact he was on the Enterprise. I don't know if that helped.
The Borg themselves are the trigger.
Right.
Right.
I was just
I'm sure
surprised.
anytime the collective comes forward, it's like the whispers begin and he thinks he's there and the dreams start. And it's like before anything even happened in First Contact, he was having a dream about it.
Yeah.
It's like he's definitely still connected.
And it just felt like his reactions and how he handled it seemed to be that it got worse. Because it was played up a lot more, which I don't have a problem with. I don't. It's just when you take his last interaction, which was in First Contact, and then now, and those two events were separated by easily 20 years, close to 20 years. I don't know. It to me that seemed to be a little jarring for me, was that his anxiety and PTSD over the Borg got worse in that 20-year span.
I'd like to think that in First Contact, he was a little bit like Kirk. He didn't think he could really be hurt. He had the Enterprise. He had his crew with him. He had a phaser rifle with him. He had a lot of confidence on that ship because he knew his team and he knew it well. When he went on the Borg cube, he was alone. And he didn't know that Hugh was going to be there. He was alone. He was beaming down into an unknown situation. He's older. He's frailer. He's wearier. He spent the last 14 years broken.
That's a good point.
He doesn't have data.
Right.
That could be a stretch, but that's how
Also,
my brain justifies it.
Picard's not getting therapy for his PTSD.
That's another good point.
He's not getting it treated because he's not getting his brain issue treated. Well, he's
stubborn,
doctor, but he's a stubborn guy. In fact, he says, I don't want to talk about it. If you talk about it to me, I'm going to be mad.
Right. Yeah. So damn sure he's not seeing a therapist or anything.
Yeah. He's much, much older. He's had it with him for much, much longer. And when you don't deal with things for a very, very long time, they tend to seem larger than life.
Okay.
So that's kind of where my head's at. But yeah, absolutely. I mean,
yeah, he had a great connection with you, though.
Yeah. The Hugh scene was super cute. Meeting him again.
Whoever would have thought that we'd see Picard and Hugh again like this?
Nobody.
Right, because of the last time that they were in a room together, Picard was contemplating sending him back to the collective with a payload to infect the collective.
it was 28 years ago that we last saw you in Descent. And it was really cool when they announced it. And it was one of the big reasons that I was invested in seeing it. We miss you, Jonathan Del Arco. Please resurrect yourself. Come back for Buddy Cops, Elmore and Hugh, season 1. But then we end up on Nepenthe. And
Thank God.
We get our nostalgia dose. We get Riker.
It's just like you're super hot, just like sitting in the sun, and then you just go jump in the pool. That's like that. And it's not shocking either. It's just cool and it feels good. It's like, thank God. It's the calm before the struggle.
Yeah. And Picard needed this. He needed this diversion here to Nepenthe. And at the point in the season when this episode happened, there was so much going on. Mm-hmm. And this episode just felt like it was slower. It took its time, and that's because it was the calm before the storm. It's like, all this shit's been happening. Picard's getting out of his element. He feels it. He knows it. And not only for him, but also for the audience, it was just kind of like all right, let's slow things down and
let's give huggies.
And let's do hugs.
Yeah. The shield's up. Red alert.
And make pizza.
From Riker was so good. I was like, this is the safe house scene, which are like my favorite heist scenes in movies.
It was,
like when they go to the safe house and they're like, okay, we're gonna fucking hang out here for a bit, restock, rest, and plan.
Yes.
And like that's the shit I love. Like with like in the drama is like when everyone kind of gets together and like decides how they're gonna move forward and bolsters themselves for what's coming. And I think two things really, really stuck out to me in Nepenthe, both involving each Riker. Obviously Troy calls him out for not being himself, very vocally and loudly. Whereas Riker, when he does it more in a way of like, you need to get yourself together. Like, you need to realize who you are. Riker is very much like, you need to do the right thing. Whereas Troy's like, you need to be yourself. And it's two very, very like good points that kind of help him, I guess, find the way forward. Because Picard is kind of feeling ashamed talking to Riker.
Why do you think that? Why would he?
I don't know. I just got the vibe that he was like, I don't know. I just got the vibe.
Okay.
He just felt like he knew he wasn't his whole self. His whole self, like
him's whole self.
Yeah, him's whole self. Period. Yep. So yeah, that's the Nepenthe vibes I got, and Troy basically being herself, her lovely self, being kind of a therapist to Soji during her existential crisis. Like, they couldn't have picked a better group of people. And then there's their daughter, Kestra, who kind of is like a hero thing with Uncle Picard. Did she call him Uncle, or should she call him Captain?
I don't know.
Uncle Data. She said Uncle Data, didn't she?
Maybe. I don't remember that.
Possibly. She may have said Uncle Data, or
that's what I'm calling him.
Uncle Jean-Luc.
Totally got it. I sponsor this.
Yeah. It was a very beautiful reunion.
It was a beautiful reunion.
For sure.
I take a little bit of I don't know the word. I take a little bit of sadness away from this as well, because you can tell that it has been a very long time since they've seen each other, and it almost feels like that family that we got to love over 15 years of The Next Generation, from 87 to 02, And then just after Data they went on the Titan and did their thing, and Picard became an admiral and did that thing, and he's just been living on the ranch. It just kind of felt like that family
Living
fell
on the
apart.
ridge.
So yeah, I have in retrospect looked at this as like, this is a really heartwarming sequence, but it's also really sad that so much distance had been accrued between them all.
It is.
Yeah.
But the thing with Picard is that he's not a very outward and sociable person to begin with. He always seems to favor the reclusive side, and perhaps that's just he became a captain at a young age, not younger than I believe Kirk was when Kirk took command of the Enterprise. I believe Kirk was still had the record for becoming the youngest captain at what, 30, 31.
33, something like that.
Yeah, early 30s. And Picard took command of the Stargazer. And from what I recall, he was not much older. So, and that was unexpected for Picard to be in command that quickly. And that was because the captain and first officer of the Stargazer were killed. So he spent a lot of his life and a lot of his career as a captain. And there are two different ways, at least two different ways that you can be a captain that I've seen. You can be a captain like Picard, who's kind of the more solitary, in his ready room alone, kind of put a shield up between himself and anyone around him. Or you could be a captain like Kirk, who has trusted friends and has people that he talks to on that more personal level, like with Spock and McCoy. They called him Jim all the time. It was like they were
Jim. He's dead, Jim.
Right. Like they were actual friends. But with Picard, the only one who Beverly was really about the only one who ever called him Jean-Luc. I'm sure I know Riker did at least one point, but the thing is that it was not normal. McCoy and Spock calling Kirk by his name, by Jim, that was a normal thing. They did it all the time, but it was very different with Picard.
Because Jim Kirk was like a loosey goosey, just like, throwing punches with both hands, getting his shirt torn up and flirting, and like he was a cowboy.
Yes.
Whereas Picard is like, hey, what time is tea? Like it's much different. I'm gonna practice my flute in my spare time. It's like that is just such a stark difference. There's like so many walls that Picard has up.
There were a lot of walls.
A lot of walls. And honestly, like, that's just his character.
Yeah, and you're right.
It just, it's how he is. And we love him no matter what.
Well, you had Archer discover the Wild West. You had Kirk live in the Wild West. And then you had Picard be a diplomat after the Wild West had been mostly tamed.
Yes. Very, very good. Very good analogy.
The rules are very different between those three captains about what they could and couldn't do. Archer was a bit more restrained until Earth was on the line. Kirk had that bravado that kept things moving forward. And Picard was not Kirk. And I mean that there's a good amount of character creation that went into that on Roddenberry's part when he conceived of the Next Generation. He didn't want another Kirk on the bridge.
Right.
And they had to be very different people.
And boy, were they.
Generations was such a payoff.
Well,
I love the differences.
I do. It just it went so far in the opposite direction, and it really made Picard come off as like a loner. But you know,
and that's why Cisco punched Q.
Right. and that's when you ask, well, why didn't Picard just live on Nepenthe with Will and Deanna? Well, it's easy because that's not the kind of person he is. It's not his personality
okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
To be alone and reclusive is more his personality than the awkwardness of living in a house or living on the same planet with these people, or living next door. They're the only ones he'd have to talk to and carry on a conversation. It just,
he still has caretakers with him, first of all.
Yes.
Second of all, he could very easily have his own home on Nepenthe and just be neighbors, at least have them there, or be in the same fucking quadrant of the galaxy. There's also the notion that Picard developed through TNG to the end to not be as reclusive and defensive as we saw him. In fact, I would even say during First Contact, he was a lot more in the movies. He was way more rubbing elbows with the crew,
I think, Watney, you have a really good point there. And I'd like to propose that, Nepenthe is a good option. He also could have gone to Baku with Anish that he met in Star Trek Insurrection. And they fell in love and shared some trauma together. And, the last thing he says to her is, I have 3 years of leave coming up, but I'm going to take it. And Baku had the healing particles that could have rejuvenated him as well. So good options. Good pointing that out.
I think I just didn't want to see him alone is my problem with that. Much in the same way of I, don't like to think about my parents being alone as they get older.
True.
It's just an emotional, knee-jerk thing. I don't want him to be alone. I want him to be happy in his third act of his life with people he cares about, because he's done so much shit and we've watched it and we love him and we think he's come a long way. He cried to Deanna when his was it nephew?
Yes, his brother and his nephew
died. His brother and nephew died. They share a very strong bond. Him and Beverly, of all people, share a very close relationship, which I cannot believe we haven't seen or heard about her yet. It makes me so mad that we haven't, because of, oh my God.
There's more to come. They couldn't pack in too much on this first season, there's still hope there. Well, there's a little difference though. I think it's that he chooses to be alone. I get what you're saying. You don't like to think of your parents being alone or anything like that. If it's a choice, I think that's one thing. If they don't have that choice and they are alone and don't want to be, that's something kind of different. I don't see Picard as the kind of person that he's alone and he doesn't want to be, and he wants to be around friends and around people, et cetera, et cetera. It is that he chooses to be this way. No one's stopping him from living a normal life but himself.
Yeah, but he's wrong about his own choices.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, because he had done so much development. He had so much development over TNG until the end, and then
well, he's ashamed.
And then
now.
For what? And you did this for what? He's ashamed. Sure, that's fine. Yeah. I think that's a great reason for him to be alone, actually, is because he's yeah, I did all this development, and then like I have this huge like soul crushing loss.
Well, he
And-
feels ashamed because he basically the Romulans saw him as their savior, their messiah, and he felt like he personally let them down, and he couldn't recover from that.
Yeah, he slipped into a spiral hard, and he didn't come out until Dodge called him to action. Possibly another distraction from that shame, or maybe feeling like he could redeem himself from that shame.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, either way, we've discussed a lot of options that could have taken place, and it is interesting to say the middleist that the writers chose to take him on this route.
Well, I mean, Watney, he's not going to get a roommate. It's not like bosom buddies. He's just not that kind of person.
Are you saying that we couldn't afford to see Will Wheaton as a cameo on the winery? Like just kicking back, drinking a bottle of wine, being like, "Hey, Jean-Luc, how's it going?"
He's a traveler.
Exactly.
He can be there whenever he wants.
Exactly. For sure.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, it's like you have this character who started so low, like in the series, and despite always seeing him through, and then you have to go through the season 1 to see him fucking die, and then get reanimated in a freaking golem.
I'm going to get to that point soon, I hope, because I got a lot of stuff to talk about. There
I know you do, so let's keep going. So he meets Soji, right? Or are we there yet? He meets Seven. That was fucking cool. You want me a ship, Picard? Like, that was fucking badass. I love that.
I mean, Nepenthe takes us to the conclusion. We hop on La Serena, head towards Copilia Station, where everybody meets their fate, not necessarily a death. And in sort of a hamstrung battle standoff where nothing really happens, Picard succumbs to his brain abnormality. And if you're listening to us on the stream, we've got an image up here of Data's last goodbye from Nemesis, and then Picard's, sort of talking to Data, telling that he never told Data that he loved him, and you've got Data telling him, the value of mortality in humans, and then there's a static image of the golem, which kind of looks like a Matrix version of a human being.
He got the closure with Data, which he didn't get to have before, and I think that he was very lucky. Excuse me, very lucky, very fortunate that. How often does anyone get that second chance to say goodbye to someone? And for Picard, I was happy for him because he got to say all the things, talk about all the last things he's probably had on his mind over all the years since Data died the first time. So he can say those things. He can discuss those kind of unresolved, being able to say goodbye kind of things. I enjoyed every bit of the scene with him getting to do that. So I've got no complaints there. I think Picard deserved to have that closure with Data to help him be able to move on with his life.
Yeah, it wasn't as like holy shit as like I thought it was gonna be after all the dreaming he was like doing about Data. Like all of this was basically just to save a little bitty piece of Data. It was like the whole show is just, if there's a chance that I can save one piece of Data, then I'm gonna do it. And then he finally fucking sits down face to face with the guy, and he's like, "Oh, hey, am I dead?" It's like a weird conversation that it's not as impactful as I thought it was going to be, them meeting again. It was great to see him again. They were very obviously falling back into their roles together, but yeah, it was good to see. And then when oh my god, when Data dies,
that was sad.
He's sitting next to him in his TNG uniform.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Period. So sad.
Yeah.
It really is sad. And as a viewer, I projected my needs in the moment to be like, Picard, what do you mean you can just walk away? This is the guy that you've been pining over for 20 years, and he's right there. And his last wish to you is, hey, let me die. And you could be like, hey, could you stick around for 20 more years and be my buddy? We can put you in a new body.
I thought that's where they were going. I swear all my money was on that we were going to get Data in the Golem, that they were going to take Anton soon and like transfer his consciousness into the Golem and then also take what was left of Data and put it in there. I thought for sure
oh my god,
they were setting us up for a CGI Data. And I was surprised they didn't go that route, but I thought that was the way that they were going to have for us to have our cake and eat it too, was to be able to have Brent Spiner still voice Data, but have the actual physical character either be CGI or a close enough Brent Spiner looking / Data looking person doing the body. That's where I thought we were going. I thought we were going to have that. I was actually surprised that that's what we did not get. Surprised but not disappointed, because after the fact I said, would I have been happy with Data 2.0 in the next season, and now he's in the Golem or whatever.
Now you have Picard 2.0.
Right. Now we have Picard 2.0. And honestly, that gives a whole lot more things to talk about and ramifications. And it's just, where do we go from here?
I would like to say, before we get into this, I would like to say that Bruce Maddox got what he wanted. He got Data in a cage to experiment with and create more Datas.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he did.
That's
in a manner of speaking, he did. Yeah.
So yeah,
yeah, that kind of hit me too. That was a Watney uppercut right there.
Yeah.
I heard it here on BTP. Maddox succeeded 20 years later. So yeah, Picard dies.
Let's talk about the death of Jean-Luc Picard, captain of the USS Enterprise.
Yeah.
So I've been waiting all retrospective to talk about this.
Why don't you just say your piece?
No, you go first. I will defer to you. Ladies first.
No, you. Okay, fine. I'm so easily persuaded.
Yes.
So I know we're gonna have differing opinions on this, so I'll just state what I think. Okay. Philosophically. If I
Dad, get comfortable. He's getting comfortable. Like I'm gonna have to do the referee.
After a long day at work, I'm gonna really rub my two brain cells together and try and get this out.
This is why I wanted to do this tonight, because I knew you worked and you'd be in a weakened state, and I would be able to.
Fuck! You got me,
sucker.
Jay, she's gonna launch a verbal Hadouken on you. Watch out.
So Jean-Luc Picard who we all have an emotional attachment to, through TNG, through the films. The man who played Locutus of Borg, the man who had got into a fight with a Nausicaan in the Academy and had his heart stabbed through and has a, what is that? Duratanium
heart.
Duratanium heart. That man is dead. The combination of his mind, his brilliant mind, and his lifelong mortal vessel that he carried with him, that combination is gone. The man that we knew is gone. They took a copy of his mind and put it in a golem, in a synth. Now, the thing about his death that really upsets me is not so much that like he died, it's how he died. He died surrounded by people from La Serena, not anybody in particular who had been with him long.
You mean that best friend who warped away 30 seconds ago?
Yeah. Riker was literally in orbit of the planet, like moments before he said, Jean-Luc, you can take it from here. And then he left.
Right. Well,
and
but
Jean-Luc
again,
was such a reclusive person still that he said goodbye, and then he went and he died like a cat.
well,
you know,
and he chose to tell Riker to go ahead and head on out, and he didn't say anything because that nature of being reclusive just kicked in again.
So yeah, he was obviously suffering mentally a great deal at the end of the season, and they really, really primed us for Picard's death, I think, early on with the diagnosis from the doctor who was on the Star
Gazer.
Yeah, the doctor that was on the Stargazer. Back in the day.
Stargazer. Yeah. So they primed us for his death, and even then I was watching it. I was like, I can't believe this is happening right now. He's not gonna die, but they're showing him die. I was like in disbelief that he was dying, and then also in disbelief that the writers were fucking killing Picard. I was like, oh my God. Because I knew that, like, from a logistics standpoint, writing, he was gonna have to be in season 2, so he wasn't really gonna die, but they were killing him. So, now I guess to get into the philosophy of it, there's two kind of like ways, I guess, in sci-fi that you can preserve somebody in a synthetic body. You can either take their organic mind and transfer it within the same system to a new host, a la Ghost in the Shell, where it's basically your brain and you're in a synthetic cage. Do I think that's what happened in Picard? No. I think obviously you can see in the golem is like there's like some kind of structure going on up there already. Did they basically transfer like the consciousness itself into a holding room until they could prep the golem? I think that's what happened. So the combination of and then there's the camp that's like, well, I'm just gonna make a copy of myself, and then once I die, then that can just be turned on. But your consciousness when you die is gone. That is done. So it's a different consciousness that's turning on. So you won't experience that like awakening. It will just be a different copy of you doing that. And I think in this case, it was kind of like they didn't explain it all that well, but I will say my argument stands in that the Picard we knew and loved is dead. And this is a different Picard.
Okay. So
I'm done.
this is yeah, Dak, take a drink. Okay, so to me, it's not just the body that makes you who you are. Your experiences, your thoughts, feelings, emotions, personality, those things are just put into a vessel, into a body. If I were to have all of my experiences, et cetera, who I am, transferred into another physical body, to me, my opinion on the matter would be that it's still me, and that I didn't die because I still have everything that was me except for the body, and then the body is just a vessel. So you're right. The body that has the artificial heart in it is gone. The body that was assimilated is gone. That body that had whatever physical scars or trauma or whatever it is, that's gone. That body is gone. But what we have is a person who has all the experiences, thoughts, feelings, emotions that is Picard, just put into a different physical vessel. So when you ask the question, at least to me, that did Picard die, and is this a different Picard? Okay, yes and no. I don't, just because that body is lost, to me, is not the only qualifier of him still being him. As far as everyone knows, is that this is still Jean-Luc Picard, because it's the summation of who he is, not just a body. So that's and that's where the philosophical part of it rests with me. Is now had he come out of the whole thing and excuse me, had he come out of the whole thing and did not have any of the experiences, none of the knowledge, the emotions, the characterizations, if it was basically he looked like Jean-Luc Picard, but for all intents and purposes was just this starting from scratch artificial intelligence, then yes, I would tell you that no, just because he looks like him physically doesn't mean that's him, because essentially he was just born today. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't the case. It wasn't a who am I? Why am I in this body? It was he's still who he was. He went through all of those things, all those experiences. This is still the same person that had to try twice to get into the academy, Starfleet Academy. This is the same person that took command of the Stargazer at an early age. The same man that was the captain of the Enterprise D. The same man who lost his brother and his nephew in that fire, as depicted in Star Trek Generations. Same man that was assimilated. All of it, from when he was born to now, it's the same person. It's just a different body. It could have been a body that looked nothing like him, and I would still argue to say that that's Jean-Luc Picard.
I think that's a very apt assessment, for sure. And I think a kind of an episode we could look back at that assesses this in an interesting way is Tapestry. Mm-hmm. Where Picard is dying and he regrets the choices he made that led to where he is. So Q takes him back and says, here, you didn't do it. This is your life if you hadn't have done that. And he decides, I'm going to get stabbed through the heart because it's going to get me where I was. And I love where I was. So I think there's arguments to be made on both ends of it. But I think Picard towed the line of the middle. And if you believe that someone is more than just their body, then yes, I can understand that. Personally, my beliefs are that it's like a synergism. It's not that there aren't two parts, it's just that they work together to make you yourself. And so...
Okay, why wouldn't you be you if you were in an identical body that just happened to be synthetic? Why wouldn't you consider yourself still Watney?
Well, I have a hereditary kidney disease, and that has really put mortality into perspective for me. So I would say a lot of who I am and a lot of the contemplation I've done in my life is a result of the fact that I don't have a normal kidney system.
So you have physical traits that help define who you are. Yeah, like for sure. I think coming to terms with that is like part of loving yourself in a way, because like no matter how you try to twist it, like you're stuck in your body. Right. And your body is stuck with you. And I think that viewing them as separate, while I don't necessarily believe that your soul like dies when you die, I think that your body definitely is part of the place you're at now, and that's important. Okay. Yeah. I think that's a very good way of looking at it. And that's just where I'm at. I'm in that camp where I can look at this person who's now a synth and say that he is still Jean-Luc Picard. Yeah. That Picard didn't quote unquote die. I'm not saying it's not Picard. I'm saying the combination of Picard that we love. Right. Yes. Throughout TNG, throughout the films, throughout the first season of Picard, that person is gone. This is Picard, but this is like a different Picard, one that's not ailed by the same things. Right. Although it's really weird by the way, just to have this out there in the universe, if I ever die and you put me in a synth body, make it a fucking sexy ass one and make me live forever, please. Like, what if you put me in the same body, I'm gonna be. If you put me in the same body and give me 10 years in it, I'm like, what the hell are you doing, Girardi? I know. Knock it off, woman. I want all kinds of enhancements. Yeah. Also, did they just single-handedly solve like mortality in Picard? Did they create immortality? Well, I mean, we could have put him on a transporter with some of his younger DNA and beamed that into him and made him 30 years younger. Oh my god! Not the transporter thing. Hey, okay, a natural selection. That's a natural selection. Season 2, Pulaski. Yeah. I remember that, where she gets stuck on the planet and they have to like beam it out of her or something with the sexy clone bodies. So let's talk about that then. So let's talk about the ramifications of this. Have they cracked immortality? Do they have a way now where people can make backups or make a backup of their their mind, their memories, consciousness, and if they were to die, have a golem ready for them, a new body to transfer into. Is that
Rodney,
where we're going?
Rodney, are you thinking altered carbon like I'm thinking altered
Oh,
carbon?
the stacks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jay, have you
Big
seen
J,
that?
have you watched Altered Carbon?
I have not seen Altered
Okay,
Carbon.
so Altered Carbon is a cyberpunk dystopia future wherein you basically, your whole mind and soul is on this little like thing this big,
Okay.
and it sticks into the back of your neck and uploads into the body. The body is called the sleeve, right?
Yep.
And then the soul is called a stack.
Okay.
And so there's the, you have like the normal, like middle class people, lower class people that do not only have one sleeve their whole life. When they die, they die. Then you have people who die, but they can afford a new one, a new body, but it's not like a good one. It's marred with like illness. It was like, there's problems with it. And then you have the ultra rich who just keep growing new bodies for themselves.
Okay. Is this the show with what's the guy's name who was in Suicide Squad?
Yes,
was
it's him.
You know who I'm talking about, right?
Oh my God,
the
yeah,
military
he's super
guy.
hot.
Oh, that Altered Carbon. That's that show.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's the main character in it, but it's like it's basically it's a mystery because the ultra richest guy has been murdered.
I'm going to write this down.
Yeah.
He's been murdered, but his body was murdered. And so his stack is still there, and he's like put himself in a new one, and he's hiring someone to solve his murder for him. It's super good. It's a super good show. There's a lot of nudity, so just be ready for that. But
I'm in. Sold.
It's
on Netflix.
I kind of wanted to spoil a part because I think it's relevant to the discussion that we're having.
Well, now I'm going to watch it because there's nudity.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead and spoil it.
It's really good. You'll still watch it.
The idea of taking whatever essence of Picard and putting it in this golem. You could theorize. What if Picard actually somehow magically made a crazy miraculous recovery after this procedure? Would his body still be dead because his essence had been transferred into the golem, or would he wake up and would there be two of him effectively? And Altered Carbon addresses this. There is a scene in which a character shows up with two sleeves. Their stack has been copied and it's in two sleeves, and they exist side by side. And they have memories up to a certain point from the time they were created. And the law mandates that one of them has to die. And I'm not going to go into detail on the who's and the what's, the details of that, but just the concept that they can exist side by side independently, that leads me to be reluctant about the integrity of the entity that is now possessing the golem. I can give all the reaches and suspensions of disbelief just to say, yeah, okay, this happened. But when I really think about the existentialism of it, is the body, the biological host to the spirit, the soul, the essence, the consciousness, however you want to define that, if the body is crucial to that, and you take a copy of that and put it somewhere else, is it the copy? Is it the actual essence? The Matrix talks on that and says if your mind dies in the Matrix, your body dies in real life. The body cannot exist without the mind. So that theory would say that as soon as Picard's essence was transported into this golem, even if the body had a miraculous recovery, it would still be dead because the essence is gone. So there are all kinds of ways to look at it.
Does it matter if that essence was copied and pasted as opposed to cut and pasted?
Well, if we talk about a copy and paste, think about multiplicity. There's four of those. There's four different Michael Keatons, and if you make a copy of a copy, it's not quite as well.
Why Michael Keaton?
Yeah, Michael Keaton was in Multiplicity.
Oh, okay,
the actor.
never mind.
So the concepts are many and varied, and I would like to just throw out there. Q wouldn't let that happen to Jean-Luc Picard.
Period.
Okay.
Period.
I can
You
agree
know
with
he loves him.
Yes.
You know he loves him. Yeah. But definitely watch Altered Carbon, Big J.
Oh, I will.
Please. Oh my gosh. And then let me know what you think, because it's like a wild ride. It's a wild ride.
It is.
I mean, it's bloody. It's sexy.
The world building is really well thought out.
The world building's amazing. The sets are amazing. The costumes are amazing. And the acting is pretty good too.
Well, I like stuff like that. It kind of also reminds me of the Surrogates, the Bruce Willis movie. So Watney, basically in society in the future, people don't leave their homes. Basically, they hook into this thing that transfers their mind, their consciousness into a body, a synthetic body. And that's how they carry out their day-to-day stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And then when they're done for the day, they unhook from the body and then they're back into their regular bodies. So yeah, if you haven't seen that, if you haven't seen it and you want to see something that's kind of addresses the same sort of topic, I would highly recommend the Surrogate.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Transhumanism.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing that I wonder, because it appeared that by this point, I know Anton Soong said that he was more of the body guy, and Bruce Maddox was the mind and brain scanning guy. So, assuming that Jurati is able to get up to speed and learn that role to where Jurati and Soong are able to continue producing these golems, I do think that raises a very interesting ethical question there, is that now when someone dies, do you take that mind, that consciousness, the knowledge, experience, transferred into another body? The other thing to think about is, are we talking about mass producing this? Is it that this is only reserved for special class of people?
Yes.
Is it just, you're talking, high ranking officials or admirals?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not going to be something that, and you can't logistically make it an option for just everyone, because then you're talking, you would need billions potentially of these things. So what's the ethical and moral dilemma there is that, okay, so we've solved we've got the ability now to cheat death, but who gets to have it?
Yeah. And it's also who wants it, because that's a big thing in Altered Carbon, is the religious people who are left have like coding in the stack so that if they die, there's like instructions not to re-upload them, because they don't believe in reanimation.
Okay.
They call it spinning up. They don't believe in being spun up again.
Okay. All right.
So,
and that's fine. That's their choice. Okay.
Yeah, it's a very interesting piece of the plot. So
I definitely think choice is a very important thing to consider here. Is, if this technology became available and people chose to use it, would it be okay to let them? Absolutely, it would be okay if somebody chose not to. And is there a point in society where everybody's doing it, choosing not to is weird?
Yeah, Picard didn't choose it.
Well, and I'm not saying that someone would have it forced on them. I'm just saying if you have a large majority of, and hell, we're talking about, are we talking about just Earth? Are we talking about it's exclusive to Federation members? Is this technology they share with the Klingons? What's left of the Romulans, Cardassians? If someone wants it, if you have 20 people who want it, but you only got one golem ready to go, how do you start playing God there? How do you decide who gets it and who doesn't? And that has opened up an entirely different can of worms there, and I think a very, very dangerous can of worms when you're talking about immortality, because you're playing God now. And now you're talking about, I've got this lineup of 20 people that want to re-upload into this body. I've got one body. So who gets to decide that? Who's deciding that? And under what criteria are they, I guess, supposedly doing that? Is there some kind of committee or a council now that says, all right, well, fill out this form, tell us what your value to society is. Mm-hmm. Why should this person get it, not that? It just, I think that this is another one of those things that it helped the plot, sure, but the kind of questions and issues it opens are I don't think that there was a lot of forethought into, well, what are we introducing into canon now? We're introducing a way that we could possibly have this immortality, and how's it going to be dealt with? Well, I think the obvious answer is that it's not. There's not going to be much of anything, I think, discussed on this in season 2.
In the show?
In the show.
No.
In the show.
No.
Right. No. The show's not going to.
Oh, no, they'll follow the trend of here's the thing, don't talk about it, don't think about it, audience. Yep.
Well, we did a number of those things. I mean, in Threshold, we went to Warp 10, discovered that you do really funky things to your biology, but the doctor fixed it. So why didn't we just do Warp 10 until we got back to Earth and have the doctor fix it? In Star Trek Into Darkness, augment blood heals everything, including crazy radiation.
Including death.
Yeah.
And we have transporters. So why do we even need starships anymore?
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of super tech that gets introduced for one bit, and then we brush it under the rug because you can't have your Deus Ex Machina solving everything in the first 5 minutes of the story.
Yeah, and that's because, and honestly, you shouldn't create the need for one anyway, with the stakes being like, where are you going to go season 2?
Right.
The stakes of the universe have already been won.
Yep.
Like, okay, let's see what you got. I'll be really happy if they go back to just like regular Trek stuff, just discovering. Maybe go to Andromeda or something. I don't know.
I want to show you guys this cool animation.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh.
Aww,
that is cool.
Puppy.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
I just thought that was smooth.
That was smooth.
That is smooth.
Yes, that was sharp.
We can totally keep talking about it. I just thought it was cool to do that.
No, I've said everything I need to about Picard. I think, Big J, I'm sorry it wasn't a little more.
No, I'm
For you.
I was wanting the table slap, but that's okay. Got a little bit. No, honestly, I'm ready to put that baby to bed. We've thoroughly gone through season 1 of Picard. I feel like there's right. Yeah. I feel like we've done more than our due diligence on that. We've got new Star Trek to start thinking about. Of course, there's season 3 of Discovery. There is Strange New Worlds that's going to be coming up. And then, of course, whatever happens in Star Trek from here to there. So I put it all out there, said it all.
Yeah, I think we've definitely given Picard a fair shot. So don't anybody say we didn't.
Right.
Because we did. We definitely did.
What I'd like to end with some predictions on season 2, if we could. But before that, to get your thoughts together, Watney, do you have enough energy to tell our listeners and viewers where else they can find us all on the interwebs?
Yeah, so you can find us on a number of different places. Anchor.fm, all of our audio broadcasts are syndicated there. So if you're watching us, if you want to listen, you can find us there. And if you're listening and you want to watch us, you can find us on YouTube, Beyond Trek Podcasts, Beyond Trek Productions. That'll get you there. And then we have a Patreon, of course. We would love your support there. Patreon.com/Beyond Trek. We also have a Twitter. That's where we're the most active. It's at Beyond Trek Pod. And we have a Facebook, Beyond Trek Productions. Like us, chat us up, say hello online. Tell us what your predictions are. We would love to know.
And see if you can beat me at trivia.
Oh, yes.
The big question. Okay, predictions, Dag.
Yep.
Predictions for season 2. Well, there's some spoilers about casting that we've already known and talked about, but Whoopi Goldberg has accepted to return in Picard season 2 as Guinan. I'm not so sure as much of predictions as hopes, but I would like to see some kind of emotional moment where Guinan and Troy, separately or maybe in the same room, sort of acknowledge together the entity that is in front of them, that is Picard. Because Troy said,
"Oh, I just got chills."
Troy said she couldn't read Soji, which implies that Troy won't be able to read Picard, and that has to be something that's super jarring for Troy, who has come to, just
that is why I say Picard's dead.
Right.
Because
it's going to be scary for Troy.
That connection is,
and does everybody in that universe, just like us, we all kind of debated back and forth about, is he dead, is he not dead? But does everybody in that universe just go along with the fact that, oh, my buddy got transferred to a new body, no worry about it, it's cool. It would be interesting to see some exploration of that and some exploration of Picard's trying to identify with who he is now. The weight of his heart isn't there anymore. The physical scars from his assimilation and torture at the hands of the Cardassian, those aren't there anymore. He doesn't have to live with the physical burdens, but is there like a sense of phantom scar, phantom pain syndrome that his consciousness was so aware of that as a part of who and what he lived with his whole life since those events. Is it still there, or is he suddenly like, whoa, that extra weight in my chest is gone because I have an organic heart again. It's not made of duratanium. That would be something I'd like to see.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I'm thinking, and this is definitely what I would like to see, and it's a long shot. So we talked about the stakes kind of keep inflating, and we keep overcoming the big stakes. So do we try to go bigger or go smaller with that? And my thought, and this was kind of made more so when Whoopi Goldberg accepted the role of Guinan in season 2. And of course, John Delancey is one of the ones that, if anyone could have any character who's owed their return to the franchise for sure. I don't think anyone could argue that Q doesn't deserve it. He definitely should be there. I think if anyone deserves a return, it's Q, because Q and Picard just have this connection that I think would be perfect for getting into this next season, especially with Guinan being a part of it. And this was my thought. This is my crazy thought on what they could do with that. Because of course, obviously, John Delancey's older. He comes back as Q, and a lot of people have said, well, what he'll do is Q will snap his fingers and make himself look older, just like Picard is, so that way they can match up with the age. What I'd like to see, and this is a crazy one, but that there is some kind of alien race, could be from another galaxy or another time, something, but they're able to hunt down and kill Q. There is some thing that they see around the Q, some kind of aura that helps identify them, and the Q are being hunted. They don't know why. They don't know how these aliens or whatever it may be are able to do this. And Q has to make himself human again in order to avoid detection. And he needs Picard's help in saving the continuum. So now you've got Picard being asked to save the remaining Q in the Q continuum. And of course, Guinan is mixing there somewhere. I know it's crazy. It's certainly probably very fanboyish, but I think that would be a neat way of getting Q on Picard's level. No, doesn't have none of the omnipotence, the powers. He's on the run. He's in hiding, and basically he tells Jean-Luc, you owe me. I need your help. You owe me. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure we won't get that at all.
Please.
But that would be sweet. That would be awesome.
That would be cool.
So, yeah, but
anything else?
No
other predictions?
Did you have any?
What's that?
Did Watney have any?
Ooh.
What is that? Oh, the crystal ball. The crystal ball Rios.
I predict that Rafi and Seven will have a tumultuous relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I predict that Elnor is going to be like the kid in that relationship. And he's going to make them like not fight. Be like, you guys are being stupid. And like runs off. I predict that Girardi and Rios' relationship is going to be rough too. I don't know why. I just get a feeling.
You think?
Yeah.
We're talking about the lady hooked up with the dude after she killed her lover. Yeah, that's going to be awkward as a starter for a relationship.
I feel like we got the news that Narissa and Narek are not returning.
That's right. Yeah. So
that saddens me to the pits of darkness that I cannot describe. So none of my predictions can unfortunately involve them. I think Picard is gonna get he's gonna really enjoy the new body. I think that and hope that his acting is gonna be a lot more Picard-y, because I felt very much so in the first season, he was kind of I feel like, as Bilbo said, I feel like too little butter spread over too much bread. I felt like that a lot. I felt like that a lot in the first season. So
I feel like too little butter spread over too much bread. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that phrase.
Okay, well. What else? I don't know if I have any plot predictions necessarily, like big story predictions, but I am interested in primarily two characters. I'm interested in Rafi and I'm interested in Elnor. And after that, whatever. Rios is a close third, but my two main BBs are Rafi and Rios. So, Rafi and Elnor, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Rafi and Elnor. So, that's all I've got. But
All right.
I think we've honestly hashed out Picard to death. So, listeners, if you've stuck with us this far, expect other content from here on out.
You should be commended.
Next season.
If you stuck with us this far.
If you stuck with us this far, message me on Discord because I want to meet you.
Smash that like button.
Smash that like button.
Yeah. So yes, there's going to be more content coming. Just some of the things that we'll have coming up. Of course, we'll start getting into talking about Discovery Season 3.
Look forward to in the future. I would say from BTP, stay tuned to future episodes of Tech with Tato, Fragged. I think Jay, we talked about doing some more episodes of Rift Tracks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where we sit and watch an episode of one of the series together and just shred it. And there's the game show. You still working on the Nth Degree game show?
The trivia show that I would like to host once I figure out a good platform for questions with internet lag.
Right. So basically for Beyond Trek Productions, there's a lot of stuff that we'll have coming up. It won't just be the main Beyond Trek podcast. There'll be other stuff that we'll be doing under Beyond Trek Productions, some exciting things. Mm-hmm. And you'll still see us. So again, thank you for everyone that stuck with us through the retrospective. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.
And I'm going to go upload myself into a new body because I'm wore out. I'm old. Especially after Watney reminded me that I'm old as shit.
Me next.
I'm just going to go assimilate dinner.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your years. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.